They say never stop for strangers at night. But what if the stranger is a child? It was just past midnight when Officer Claire Donovan got the call. A driver had reported seeing a girl no older than 12 walking barefoot along Route 19. The road cut through miles of dark forest, an endless stretch where the trees pressed so close it felt like the highway was suffocating under their weight. It wasn't a place anyone should have been walking. Claire's first thought was that it was some runaway, scared and lost. But something about the driver's voice lingered with her. He said the girl wasn't right. When Claire pulled onto Route 19, the road was empty, the night air heavy and thick. Her headlights cut a narrow tunnel through the black. She drove slowly, scanning the shoulders, and then she saw her, a girl in a pale nightgown, long black hair matted against her face, arms hanging limply by her sides as she walked barefoot on the frozen pavement. Claire pulled over, her cruiser's red and blue lights flashing across the trees. She stepped out, her breath a cloud in the cold. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Where are your parents?" The girl stopped walking, but didn't turn around. She just stood there, the gown fluttering slightly in the breeze. Claire felt something twist in her stomach. A pressure, the kind you get when your body knows something your mind refuses to admit. She reached for her radio to call it in. That's when the girl finally turned her head. Her face was pale, too pale, her eyes wide and unblinking, reflecting the cruiser's lights like glass. Her lips moved, whispering something Claire couldn't hear. She stepped closer. "It's okay. You're safe now. What's your name?" The girl raised a trembling hand and pointed to the woods. Claire turned her flashlight in that direction, and for a moment, she swore she saw movement between the trees, dozens of figures, just barely out of focus. But when the light hit them directly, the space was empty. She looked back at the girl. Gone. Just gone. Claire's heart kicked into overdrive. She shouted, sweeping her light across the road. And then she heard it. A sob, soft, broken, coming from behind her. She spun, and the girl was standing right at the edge of the woods now, her back to the trees, her eyes locked on Claire. "Please," the girl whispered. Claire stepped forward, but the sobbing grew louder. It wasn't just one child now, it was dozens, all overlapping, all begging, all crying from somewhere deep in the forest. Claire froze, paralyzed by the sound. The girl backed slowly into the shadows, the darkness swallowing her. Claire called for backup, her voice shaking, but the radio only hissed. She forced herself forward, her boots crunching on leaves as she followed the sound. The woods closed in, suffocating her flashlight beam. And then she saw them, dozens of children, standing between the trees, faces pale, gowns torn, their eyes hollow and wet with tears. They spoke in unison, their voices layered into one broken plea. "Don't leave us again." Claire stumbled backward, nearly dropping her light. "Again? What do you mean?" But the more she looked, the more their faces blurred, until she realized they weren't children at all. Their faces were hers, every single one of them, copies of her own face, crying, screaming, begging for help. The flashlight flickered out. She bolted back toward the highway, heart slamming against her ribs. When she burst onto the road, the forest fell silent behind her. No children, no sobbing, just the empty stretch of Route 19. Backup finally arrived minutes later, finding her shaken and pale, clutching her knees by the side of the cruiser. They searched the woods. No footprints, no sign of anyone walking the highway that night. But Claire knows what she saw, what she heard. And every night since then, she wakes up at 12:03 a.m., the exact time of the call, hearing faint sobbing outside her window. They say Route 19 is haunted, but not by children. Some locals whisper that it shows you the one thing you're most afraid to lose. Others say the road feeds on guilt, forcing you to confront the versions of yourself you abandoned. So I'll ask you, if you were driving down a dark highway, and saw a child walking alone, would you stop? Or would you keep driving, knowing you might never come back the same? Let me know in the comments. And if this story unsettled you, wait until you hear about the police officer who answered a 911 call from a house that didn't exist. They told me the house was abandoned. But then why did the lights turn on when I stepped inside? It started with a call no officer ever wants to get a disturbance. At an address that shouldn't exist anymore. Officer Michael Carver had been on the job for 15 years, long enough to know that sometimes dispatch sends you places out of habit, not reality. The house on Willow Lane was supposed to be empty, condemned after a fire nearly a decade ago. Nobody lived there. Nobody could. Yet the caller swore they saw someone standing in the upstairs window, a pale face staring out into the night. Carver pulled up slowly, headlights sweeping over the crumbling exterior. The roof sagged. The siding was blackened with soot. Windows covered in grime. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a corpse rotting in plain sight. But as he killed the engine, something flickered. A light, dim, weak, coming from the upstairs bedroom window. His throat tightened. He knew this was wrong, but duty had a way of dragging you where you didn't want to go. He radioed in, voice quieter than he intended, and stepped out into the biting wind. Each footstep crunched on the gravel drive, echoing too loudly in the silence of the street. By the time he reached the porch, the air felt heavier, thicker, as though the house itself was exhaling. The front door, charred and swollen from water damage, groaned open when he touched it. Inside, the smell of smoke and mildew clung to the air. Though the fire had been years ago, dust coated the furniture, untouched and frozen in time. But what struck Carver most was the photographs still hanging on the walls. Families smiling, children laughing, a life preserved in ashes. "Police," he called, voice steady but careful. "If anyone's in here, make yourself known." Silence answered him. He moved room by room, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. His boots stirred dust that seemed too thick, too deliberate, as though no one had set foot here in years. Yet every time he turned a corner, he swore he heard it. Soft footsteps, just ahead, retreating into the dark. At the base of the staircase, his light caught something strange. Handprints, small ones, smeared in soot, trailing up the railing. He froze, listening. A sound drifted down from upstairs. A faint lullaby, sung in a voice so fragile it cracked with every note. Carver's heart thudded. He climbed, each step creaking like it would give way. At the top, the hallway stretched endlessly. The wallpaper blistered and peeling. The lullaby grew louder, and the faint glow of light spilled from the last door on the left. He pushed it open. The room was untouched. A little girl's bedroom, perfectly preserved. Toys lined the shelves. A doll sat propped on the bed, its porcelain face cracked. On the dresser, a music box played a haunting tune, though its gears were rusted and unmoving. And there in the corner stood a girl, barefoot, dressed in white, her face hidden behind long strands of dark hair. Carver whispered, "Sweetheart, are you all right?" She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were empty sockets, black and glistening, tears dripping down her cheeks. She opened her mouth as though to speak, but no sound came out. Only smoke, curling into the air like breath from a fire. Carver staggered back, slamming against the doorframe. The lullaby warped, the music box grinding to a halt. The girl stepped forward, each movement jerky, unnatural, like she was being pulled by invisible strings. And then she spoke, not in a child's voice, but in many voices at once. Men, women, children, all crying the same words. "Why didn't you save us?" The lights in the room flickered violently. The walls blackened, peeling away until flames licked across the ceiling. Carver raised his arms to shield himself, coughing in the smoke. But when he lowered them, the fire was gone. The room was empty, just dust, decay, and silence. The girl had vanished, breath ragged. Carver stumbled out of the room. The hallway stretched impossibly long now, door after door appearing where none had been before. From behind each one, fists pounded, voices screamed, begging to be let out. He ran, boots thundering across the warped floorboards, until he burst back through the front door into the cold night. Behind him, the house was dark again, lifeless, as if nothing had happened. The backup unit arrived minutes later. They searched every inch of the house. No footprints, no light, no music box. But Carver knew what he saw, and when he returned to his cruiser, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. On the passenger seat lay the cracked porcelain doll from the little girl's room, its head tilted, its glass eyes reflecting the flashing sirens. Carver never took another call on Willow Lane again. To this day, the house still stands, but no one dares go near it. Neighbors say at night, if you look closely, you'll see a pale face staring from the upstairs window, and if you listen closely, you'll hear a lullaby, faint but steady, drifting across the street. So I'll ask you, if you saw lights turn on in an abandoned house, would you go in, or would you walk away, knowing some doors were never meant to be opened? Tell me in the comments, and if this story haunted you, wait until you hear about the cop who answered a 911 call from inside his own apartment.